It was, on in so many ways, it was a terrible.
For more than 4 decades, Hollywood has been haunted by one of its darkest and most mysterious tragedies, the death of Natalie Wood. The beloved actress, whose beauty and talent captured millions of hearts, was found drowned off the coast of Catalina Island in 1981. But what truly happened that night has remained a shadowy secret buried beneath waves of speculation, whispers, and unanswered questions. Now, after years of silence, one man who was there, legendary actor Christopher Walken, is finally breaking his silence. And what he's revealing has left the world absolutely stunned. Walken, who was aboard the yacht Splendor the night Natalie died, has long remained tight-lipped, choosing not to speak publicly about the tragic events that unfolded. Many wondered why. Was it fear, guilt, respect for Natalie's memory, or perhaps knowledge of something far more disturbing? Over the years, the mystery only deepened, especially with the shifting statements from Natalie's husband, Robert Wagner, and the chilling inconsistencies in official reports. Rumors of a heated argument, jealousy, and betrayal have all swirled around that fateful night. But no one truly knew the truth. Until now. In a shocking turn of events, Walken has finally opened up about that night, revealing fragments of truth that cast a new light on everything we thought we knew. His words are calm but heavy, carrying the weight of decades of silence and sorrow. What he describes paints a far more complex and emotional picture than anyone could have imagined. A night of tension, fear, and tragic misunderstanding that ended in unthinkable loss. Christopher Walken's confession doesn't just reopen an old Hollywood mystery, it forces the world to look again at the secrets that fame, love, and power can hide. And after hearing what he finally said, fans and investigators alike are asking the same chilling question. Was Natalie Wood's death truly an accident? Or something far more sinister? It was the evening of November 28th, 1981, when Natalie Wood, her husband Robert Wagner, and actor Christopher Walken boarded Wagner's yacht, Splendor, for what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway off the coast of Catalina Island, California. The night was calm, the sea shimmered under the moonlight, and the 3 stars, all at the height of their Hollywood fame, appeared to be enjoying a rare moment of peace away from flashing cameras and movie sets. But as history would soon record, that peace wouldn't last. By dawn, Natalie Wood, one of Hollywood's most beloved actresses, would be found dead, floating face down in the cold Pacific waters. Natalie had always been the picture of perfection, a girl who grew up under the unforgiving glare of Hollywood's spotlight. From Miracle on 34th Street to West Side Story, she was a star who could do no wrong. But behind the red carpets and movie premieres, Natalie's life was far more complicated. Her marriage to Robert Wagner was passionate, but it was also filled with fiery arguments and moments of intense jealousy. Wagner adored her, but he was also deeply possessive, especially when it came to her co-stars, and that's where Christopher Walken entered the picture. Walken and Natalie were filming the science fiction movie Brainstorm together. Their on-set chemistry was undeniable, and their growing friendship didn't go unnoticed by Wagner. What was meant to be a professional bond quickly became a source of tension. Even close friends of the couple admitted that Wagner was uncomfortable with Walken's presence, though Natalie dismissed the rumors as harmless gossip. That night on the yacht, the tension reportedly reached its breaking point. The group had been drinking a lot. Witnesses on nearby boats later recalled hearing raised voices echoing across the water. The argument between Wagner and Natalie was said to be fierce, emotional, and deeply personal. Walken, according to reports, tried to calm things down, but the shouting only grew louder. At some point during the night, Natalie disappeared. Wagner later told investigators that he assumed she had gone to bed. But when he checked, she was gone, along with a small dinghy that was tied to the yacht. Hours later, her lifeless body was discovered in the water, wearing only a flannel nightgown, socks, and a down jacket. The official cause of death was ruled an accidental drowning. But from the very beginning, few believed that story. There were too many questions, too many contradictions. How did a woman who was terrified of deep water end up alone in a dinghy at midnight? Why were there bruises on her arms and legs? And why did it take so long for anyone on the yacht to call for help? Christopher Walken's role in the tragedy has always been a point of fascination and suspicion. For decades, he refused to speak about that night, calling it a terrible accident and insisting he had nothing more to add. But as time passed, the silence became deafening. Fans wanted answers. Investigators reopened the case in 2011, changing Natalie's cause of death from accidental drowning to drowning and other undetermined factors. Robert Wagner was later named a person of interest, though he has consistently denied any wrongdoing. For years, Walken carried the weight of that night with quiet dignity, rarely addressing it in interviews. But those who knew him well said it changed him forever. The man who once exuded mystery and charisma seemed haunted by something he could never quite say out loud. And now, after more than 40 years, Christopher Walken has finally chosen to speak, not to clear his name, but to bring closure to a story that has haunted Hollywood for generations. What he's revealed is both heartbreaking and shocking, a confession that doesn't just revisit the night Natalie Wood died, but exposes the deep emotional turmoil that led to it. The world may think it knows what happened aboard the Splendor, but Walken's version of events may finally rewrite history. For decades, Christopher Walken avoided every question about Natalie Wood's death with quiet but unwavering deflection. It was an accident, he'd say, and nothing more. Reporters, talk show hosts, and even co-stars tried to press him, but Walken's expression always turned distant, his words few and final. It was as if he'd locked away that night deep inside his memory and thrown away the key. But time has a way of demanding truth, and after more than 40 years, Walken has finally chosen to speak, breaking a silence that has haunted not only him but also millions who never stopped wondering what really happened on that yacht. In a rare and emotional conversation, Walken admitted that what happened that night was far more complicated than the public ever knew. He began by saying, "It wasn't supposed to be like that. We were just supposed to have dinner, some drinks, and talk about the movie." Natalie was tired. She wanted peace. But peace wasn't what we found. According to Walken, tension had been building all evening. Wagner had been drinking heavily and was already jealous over the friendship between Walken and Natalie. He didn't like that we talked about work, that we laughed together. He thought it meant something it didn't, Walken revealed quietly. Natalie adored her husband, but she was strong-willed. When she felt cornered, she fought back. That night, she fought. Walken described how the mood shifted from friendly to hostile. The argument between Natalie and Wagner grew loud, emotional, and frightening. There was yelling, glass breaking. It was about jealousy, about control, he recalled. I tried to calm things down, but there was so much anger. Walken says he eventually stepped away, retreating to his cabin, hoping the couple would cool off. That was the last time he saw Natalie alive. Hours later, chaos erupted. Wagner was frantic, shouting her name into the darkness. The dinghy was missing, and so was Natalie. When I came back up, everything felt wrong, Walken said softly. There was this silence, the kind that feels like the world is holding its breath. They searched the deck. The water everywhere. But she was gone. What haunts Walken most isn't just her death, but the unanswered questions that followed. Natalie was afraid of water, he said firmly. She would never take that boat out alone. Not in the dark, not after drinking, and especially not after an argument. His words echoed what many close to Natalie had always believed, that she would have never willingly left the yacht that night. Walken also addressed the decades of speculation that he was hiding something or protecting someone. People think I knew more, but the truth is, I didn't see it happen, he said. If I did, I would have told the truth back then. He admitted, however, that he regrets staying silent for so long. Maybe if I had spoken earlier, people would have understood what kind of woman Natalie was. Strong, kind, full of life. She deserved better than to become a mystery. When asked why he finally decided to speak now, Walken paused. His voice, often sharp and deliberate, softened. Because time runs out, he said. You carry something like that for 40 years, and it becomes a shadow that follows you everywhere. I think it's time to let some light in. He did not accuse anyone directly, nor did he point fingers, but his tone, his sorrow, and his subtle choice of words spoke volumes. It was not a confession of guilt, but a confession of grief, of a man who witnessed a tragedy and lived in silence for far too long. Walken's statement has reignited public interest in the case, sparking new conversations about what truly happened on that cold November night. Investigators, journalists, and fans are once again revisiting the evidence, wondering if Walken's quiet revelation might finally bring justice, or at least closure, to one of Hollywood's most heartbreaking mysteries. For Christopher Walken, breaking. Robert Wagner, however, was reportedly devastated. At 90-something, the aging actor had long lived under the cloud of suspicion. Walken's new account didn't directly accuse him, but it didn't clear him either. According to insiders close to the family, Wagner was shaken and deeply hurt by Walken's statements. He had always maintained that Natalie's death was an accident, claiming she must have slipped while trying to secure the dinghy. Yet Walken's quiet insistence that Natalie would never go near the water that night reopened the most haunting question of all. Was Wagner hiding something? Within days, journalists and investigators revisited every piece of evidence, every interview, every photograph from that night in 1981. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department even acknowledged receiving renewed public interest in the case. Former detectives spoke out, revealing that several clues had never sat right with them. The bruises on Natalie's body, the scratch marks on the dinghy, and the unexplained delay in reporting her missing. It never added up, one retired officer admitted. It's like everyone on that boat knew more than they were saying. The public response was emotional and overwhelming. Fans flooded social media with tributes to Natalie, calling for justice and remembering her not as a mystery, but as a woman full of grace, talent, and laughter. Younger generations who had only heard the story in whispers now found themselves captivated by the tragedy of a star who died too young, and a truth that took decades to surface. Meanwhile, Walken remained largely out of the spotlight. After his confession, he retreated to the quiet life he had always preferred, granting no more interviews. Those close to him said he felt a strange calm, as if a heavy burden had finally been lifted. He doesn't want attention, one source revealed. He just wanted to set the record straight before it was too late. Hollywood's older generation, many of whom had known Natalie personally, found themselves reflecting on the darkness that often hides behind the glitter of fame. The story reminded everyone that the movie industry, for all its lights and luxury, could also be a place of loneliness, secrecy, and heartbreak. Natalie's story isn't just about death, one veteran director remarked. It's about what happens when fame, jealousy, and love collide. In the months that followed, documentaries and podcasts began revisiting the case with renewed vigor. Archival tapes, police reports, and private diaries were re-examined. Walken's confession had breathed new life into a mystery that refused to rest. And for many, this time felt different, as if the world was finally ready to listen. Still, the truth remains elusive. Natalie Wood's death is officially classified as drowning and other undetermined factors. No one was ever charged. And yet, the collective sense of unease lingers, a haunting reminder that some stories never truly end. As one Hollywood historian put it, Christopher Walken didn't solve the mystery. He reopened it. And maybe that's what Natalie would have wanted. Not to be forgotten, not to be silenced. For fans, friends, and family, Walken's words were more than just a revelation. They were a reckoning. After 4 decades of silence, he had dared to speak the truth as he knew it. Whether or not it brings justice, one thing is certain: Natalie Wood's voice, through Walken's confession, has finally been heard again. In the wake of Christopher Walken's confession, the world was once again reminded of why Natalie Wood's story has never faded from public memory. She wasn't just another Hollywood star. She was a symbol of grace, vulnerability, and ambition in an era that demanded perfection from its women. Her death at just 43 wasn't merely a loss for the film industry. It was a loss for a generation that had grown up watching her transform from a child prodigy into one of the most magnetic actresses of her time. And now, with Walken's words echoing through the decades, her legacy feels more human and more haunting than ever before. Natalie's daughters, Natasha Gregson Wagner and Courtney Wagner, have carried her memory with quiet dignity. For years, they've fought to preserve her image not as a tragedy, but as a mother, a dreamer, and a woman of immense heart. Natasha, who was just 11 when her mother died, once said, "People forget she was real. She laughed, she cooked, she danced in the living room. She was warmth itself." Yet Walken's confession reopened old wounds. Natasha, now an adult, expressed mixed emotions. Gratitude for Walken's honesty, but sadness that the truth, even now, remains incomplete. "It doesn't bring her back," she said softly, "but it reminds the world she mattered." Hollywood, too, has found itself re-examining its past. Natalie's death, long dismissed as an unfortunate accident, has become a symbol of the silence that often surrounds powerful men and vulnerable women in the entertainment world. The questions about that night, about jealousy, control, and fear, have forced a new generation of actors to confront how the industry once ignored the darker truths behind its golden image. For Christopher Walken, the aftermath of his confession has been bittersweet. He remains one of cinema's most respected actors, but his legacy is now intertwined with one of Hollywood's most enduring mysteries. Friends describe him as reflective, even relieved, though visibly older, as if decades of unspoken grief have finally caught up with him. "He didn't speak to gain sympathy," one confidant explained. "He spoke because he couldn't carry it anymore." Walken's decision to tell his story has also reignited public empathy for him. People no longer see him as the mysterious figure on the yacht, but as a man who witnessed tragedy and lived under its shadow. Meanwhile, Robert Wagner continues to deny any involvement in Natalie's death. In his memoir, Pieces of My Heart, he expressed deep remorse but stood by his belief that her death was accidental. Yet, with Walken's subtle revelations, many feel that Wagner's version of events has lost credibility. The court of public opinion remains divided, half sympathetic, half suspicious. But perhaps the greatest truth to emerge from Walken's confession is not about guilt or innocence, but about silence itself. How silence protects, how it wounds, and how, eventually, it demands to be broken. Natalie Wood's life was a tapestry of contradictions. Dazzling yet fragile, adored yet misunderstood. On screen, she embodied strength and sensitivity. Off-screen, she wrestled with fears and insecurities that fame only magnified. Yet through it all, she remained a consummate professional, delivering performances that still move audiences today. Films like Splendor in the Grass, Rebel Without a Cause, and West Side Story showcase her brilliance and remind the world why she remains immortal in Hollywood's pantheon. After Walken's revelation, retrospectives of Natalie's work flooded television networks and streaming platforms. Fans shared clips, interviews, and memories with renewed affection. For many, it was less about the mystery and more about celebrating the woman who gave her heart to every role she played. As one critic wrote, Natalie's death may remain unsolved, but her art solves something deeper. It reminds us why truth, beauty, and love are worth fighting for. In the end, Walken's words did more than reignite an old investigation. They reopened hearts. They forced the world to see beyond the glamour and gossip, to remember the people, the pain, and the love behind the legend. And though Natalie's story will always carry an air of mystery, one thing is now clear. The silence that once surrounded her has finally been broken. As Christopher Walken said in his final reflection, "Maybe we'll never know everything that happened that night. But what I do know is that Natalie Wood deserves to be remembered, not for how she died, but for how she lived." And with that, after 40 years of whispers and wonder, the waves that once hid her truth finally began to calm.